Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Devin, you can call me Dev. Today we're going to be going through my 5-star reads of all time. But first, I have a margarita. It is an appropriate hour for me to be drinking a margarita, so cheers. Delicious. A little bit of background behind my Goodreads account. First off, if you want to be friends or follow me, my Goodreads is in the description below. Feel free to add me. I want to see what you're reading. I want you to see what I'm reading. So feel free to add me. I would love it. I have had my account since 2015. I was 15 years old in 2015. I'm now an adult. I feel like my taste, though sometimes questionable, has matured a little bit, but that means that some of my 5-star reads are from a period when I was into a lot of YA, just discovering romance, and I think the level of my 5-star reads has slightly altered, but let's just chat about it anyways, because it's fun, and it's fun looking back on what I used to love and things that I still love and what maybe is a bit questionable now. So let's get into it. Okay, so starting off, my first 5-star read is actually Divergent. The chokehold this series had on me and every other 13 to 18 year old in 2015 is ridiculous. I remember finishing the final Divergent book and sobbing. Like, I had a visceral reaction to it. I probably, if I reread it now, I would think that it was like cringy and not, you know, worthy of me sobbing my absolute eyes out. But at the time, it literally felt like my first heartbreak. I really enjoyed this as a 15-year-old. So basically, if you don't know what Divergent is, if you've been living under a rock, so there's 5 factions. So there's Candor, Abnegation, Dauntless, Amity, and Erudite. And basically it follows the main character Beatrice and her sort of exploration of her identity and family and love and, you know, expectations of who you should be versus who you are. It's a really enjoyable series to read if you haven't before. I think it's just a fun one to say that you've read. The romance in it is juicy. I found it believable and that the characters surprisingly had a lot of chemistry, which is surprising because if you know the characters, they're a bit plain at times. Overall, the Divergent series, really fun, and that was my first 5-star read. My next book is My next 5-star read is actually the Beautiful Disaster series by Jamie Maguire. This, to this date, it's still one of my favorite series. I reread the main books in the series, like so Beautiful Disaster, Walking Disaster, and then some of the other books, I'm gonna say once a year at least. And I love it. I love it still. I loved it as a 13-year-old, I'm gonna say, that I first read it, which is kind of a little bit questionable because it's very spicy. It hit the spot. So basically this series is about the Maddoxes. So it's a group of brothers, and also one of the books features the cousin, and it follows their like romance, their love lives, and it's juicy. And it's just the right drama that I want in a romance. It has aged a little bit questionably because the relationships are a bit toxic, but take it with a pinch of salt. If you're looking for a juicy romance series, definitely read this one. My next 5-star read is actually Red Queen by Victoria Avia. This was actually the Goodreads Choice 2015 winner. I loved this book and I still love this book, and I actually really want to reread it as an adult. I think I finished this book in January 2016 and gave it 5 stars then, and I reckon if I read it again I would probably give it 5 stars. It follows this fantasy world where there's 2 different types of people. There's people with red blood, which are the commoners, and then there's people with silver blood, which are the elite. The silver blood people actually have powers, which is a really fun aspect of it. And I'm not going to go super in depth into the details of the plot, but if you're looking for super powery fantasy romance with a plot twist and a freaking good plot twist, this is the book for you. The next 5-star read, and actually my first 5-star read of recent years, is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This was my very first book of 2022 and it was phenomenal. It basically follows Mary Law, who lives in Paris, and Werner, who is an orphan who lives in Germany. And this is actually set during World War II, so this is a historical fiction. And it is just so beautifully weaved together that these people's lives and identities and values and experiences are so different, yet so interconnected. And seeing over the years and through the events how they weave into one another is incredible, and the ending was beautiful. I loved the radio. I think the radio stuck with me, and having that sort of theme throughout and having that as like a motif, and you know, weaving in the line, all the light we cannot see, like that gave me goosebumps, and it was just beautiful. Seriously, if you're looking for historical fiction or you're looking for something to be really moved by, something quite emotional, this is it. So my next 5-star read is actually my first and only Colleen Hoover 5-star read. But my 5-star coho read is November 9, and I love this book. The plot twist was insane. It was so good. I did not see it coming, and that is what I want with a plot twist. But basically it follows Fallon and Ben. They meet each other, sparks fly, but they decide they're only going to see each other on November 9th, so one day of each year, and they're to have no contact between November 9th to the next November 9th. And I think that's such a unique premise. It was so fun and engaging and gripping. You wanted to keep reading and you didn't want to put down the book because you just wanted to know, you know, what's going to happen at the next November 9th, and seeing, you know, life get in the way. It was incredible. Loved November 9. My next 5-star read, and I'm going to say my favorite book of all time, is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and this was a recent read and I cannot stop thinking about it. I will probably reread this very, very soon. It is heartbreaking. I will insert a picture here of me absolutely sobbing my eyes out. I think I cried for about 3 days, clearly looking like an absolute wreck. But wow, 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 was this a freaking masterpiece. Just a word of warning, if you are interested in reading this book, I highly recommend looking at the trigger warnings first. I'd be a little bit careful going into it. But basically it follows 4 friends throughout their life from the end of college until late adulthood, and it shows all their life experiences, and it was just so moving, and I just cannot stop thinking about it, and I will definitely be rereading this very, very soon. My next 5-star read is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yes, I am a basic bitch. This was such a fun read. It was so gripping. It was probably one of the reads that got me back into reading. So if you're looking for something to get you out of a slump and you haven't read The 7 Husbands, I would absolutely recommend this. So basically it follows a writer who has been asked to basically write the biography of Evelyn Hugo, who was like a old Hollywood movie star. It chronicles the life of Evelyn and, as the title says, her 7 husbands. This was so good, and the plot twist at the end, I am a slut for plot twists. Super entertaining, and that is what you want in a book. My next 5-star read was one of my most recent reads, actually, and that was The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. Now this book is actually based off of the true story of Leo, who was a Jewish man who was living through World War II, and he was sent to a concentration camp and he met the love of his life, Gita. It's such a beautiful story that follows how kindness and humanity can pull through in even the darkest of times, and how there's glimpses of hope through even the worst times in humanity. It was so heartbreaking and sad, but heartwarming at the same time with some of the things and the relationships that Leo had, and reading the very end with, you know, the true story about Leo and Gita and how they ended up moving to Melbourne, and then when they died, and then their son talking about them, and it was just incredible. This is something that I think everyone should read. It's so important to hear the story and bring light to the injustices that happened during this time in history. This was a really beautiful story to read, and I couldn't recommend it more. My next 5-star read, which I'm so excited about, is actually Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I did talk about this a little bit in my April wrap up. So basically this follows the Marsh girl, whose name is Kaya. This is in North Carolina in the 50s, 60s. And basically it follows her growing up. She's abandoned, and so she's living in like absolute poverty, and she almost becomes like a legend around town that people almost fear because she's, you know, the creepy outsider that no one wants to talk to. So she becomes quite isolated. The main substantial plot follows a murder that happened in town, which everyone points their fingers at Kaya. And holy shit, the ending was insane. It was such a good way to wrap it up, and it was so satisfying. I cannot wait to see this in movie format with Daisy Edgar Jones and Taylor Swift singing her song, sounding like Lana Del Rey. I cannot wait. So 5 stars, Delia Owens, kudos to you. My next 5-star read is actually Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, if you're lucky enough to currently be living in the Northern Hemisphere and you have not read Beach Read, please do yourself a favor and read this. This is the perfect read to get you out of a reading slump. This also follows themes of family really well throughout and weaves it in so it's really well balanced. And I think that this is an excellent romance that should be the blueprint for so many other romances. Emily Henry is a goddess when it comes to writing romance. Absolutely, please go to the beach, read this on your summer holiday, because I wish I could live through that currently in Australian almost winter. So my next 5-star read is The Vanishing Half by Brooke Bennett. This is such an excellent historical fiction. It is based around these African-American twin sisters who live in a town in the deep south. One of them chooses to leave and to live life as a white woman because they're quite fair-skinned, and the other one chooses to continue her life living and identifying as a black woman. It was so interesting how this was written and seeing how identity and how you view yourself and how subsequently others view you can completely change the trajectory of your life. Seeing how it impacts your family, and seeing how, though they separated, how their lives are always going to be intertwined, and how they sort of came back together, and how their daughters came together, and that sort of impact on their, you know, identity and how they viewed themselves and their relationships with others. And it was a great read. So if you're looking for a historical fiction, please do yourself a favor and read The Vanishing Half. My next 5-star read is another recent one. So this was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. So this is set in the 90s, and it follows a college student named Charlie, whose best friend unfortunately was killed by a serial killer going around campus. Basically, she is really traumatized by it and considers herself really guilty about how it happened, and she decides she has to leave campus as soon as possible. She actually finds a stranger to drive her home on like a campus, you know, community board. As soon as she gets into the car with this stranger, she immediately starts to put 2 and 2 together and thinks that this is the campus serial killer. Oh my god, plot twist central. Scrap everything I said about plot twists in the previous books. This was like 5 plot twists on top of one another. It was so good, and my heart rate the whole time, my blood pressure the whole time rising. It was insane. If you're looking for a thriller that is going to thrill you, this is it. My last 5-star read is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This was such a fun romance. I love the premise of the plot. The trope is fake dating, and it was just so good. I love any romance with like sciencey themes because I love the Rosie Project. Basically, it follows Olive, who is a PhD candidate. She she starts fake dating one of the grumpiest, most terrifying professors on campus to convince her friend that she is not single. It's just so cute, and I love seeing, you know, them slowly fall for each other and realizing that they're slowly falling for each other. I just loved it. It was fun and it felt mature and not cringy, which I was expecting it to be really cringy based on the blurb, but it wasn't. If you're looking for a fun romance to really pull you through, a quick read, this is definitely it. And that is all of my 5-star reads. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'll be making loads of book related content. I'm gonna be doing reading wrap-ups, gonna be doing read with me's, reading vlogs, recommendation videos. If there's anything you particularly wanna see, feel free to leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.